How you doing, Steve?
And we're catching up. I'm doing well, thanks, Paul. And we're catching up again on issues related to men's health. We had our first meeting on this 2 weeks ago, roughly, and we thought we'd try and get this as a regular basis. Again, I want to ask and encourage any viewers out there, when you hear something or you have some stories of your own to share, either email us or put them in the comments, and we'll try to address this stuff on another issue. Or maybe you want to join us for a session and a future session. And Paul, just before we got on, you were talking about some changes to your diet and getting back on track with that.
Oh yeah, I guess for anybody that doesn't know my story, I had a running struggle, lifelong running struggle with weight. Even when I was very much otherwise physically fit, I'm just always a big guy. I'm really tall, big boned, always carried a lot of weight, and always had extra padding. And of course, that extra padding eventually had a cost associated with it in the form of diabetes. And what I did was I started eating really simply low carb lifestyle, just avoiding sugar, avoiding simple carbohydrates, and not really watching calories or fat or anything like that, just making sure I stayed away from processed foods and ate generally healthy. I lost 70 pounds, got down way down on my weight, returned my A1C, which is your diabetes testing, to normal, was able to go off medication, and then, of course, went off the wagon,
Ah,
beginning with the last holiday season, and put back on 42 plus pounds in
whoa,
just a few months. Yeah.
that's a big gain.
It's a big gain, and it's a stupid gain, and it is a dangerous gain. Taking off lots of weight and putting it back on very rapidly, very, very dangerous thing to do. Uh,
Very
something,
common, the yo-yo effect sort of thing, eh?
yeah. I mean, I think I call it the Oprah effect. I mean, one minute she's skinny, the next minute she looks like a butterball turkey. And what can I say? But anyway, at least I did know at this point, having learned a lot about food, what to do to take care of the problem. I put on 42 pounds, and the idea is to take it off at a reasonable rate. So, of course, I've gone back on to low carb eating. And again,
This you just started this since we last spoke?
yeah, it's just been the last 2.5 weeks, actually. I'm and actually officially, because I've added something else to the regime, which I'll get to in a minute. Let's call it a week and a half that I've been in this, even though it's actually a few days longer than that. But I've been talking to a few friends, including you and Tom Golden and a couple of other people. And for some reason or another, I don't know why it came up, but the practice of fasting became a topic of discussion. And I talked to you, I talked to Tom Golden, I talked to others, and everybody I talked to about it was losing weight with it.
And I remember how we got into this because like I tried that, but not quite it's not a very serious fasting, but is a 16-hour one that I had read about last September, and we talked about this in the last session. And to remind people, the 16-hour fast is actually it's almost nothing to do, because you stop at a certain hour in the day at, say, 6 o'clock, and then you wait 16 hours before you eat anything at all again. And 16 hours from 6 p.m. is 8 o'clock the next morning. So you're sleeping through the majority of it anyways. But sorry, carry on. And we also talked about another fellow, an MRA, who was doing every second day fasting, and he
Right.
lost 50 pounds doing that. But this twigged you onto something then, eh, Paul, in a fasting of
Yeah,
your
well, I thought, why not break up the monotony? It was something that I had read a little bit about in the past. I had gathered information on fasting. I had listened to people who knew about food and nutrition talk about it. And then again, like I said, I've been talking to friends who had been doing it and experiencing some success. So I decided to try it myself. I went back regularly on the low carb diet, and I started fasting 2 days a week. And these were two 24-hour fasts. And the way I've done them, I've just completed my third one, as a matter of fact. It ended 24 hours, ended at 6 o'clock today. But what I've been doing is starting on Sunday At 6 p.m., I quit eating. I have my last food, and I don't eat again for 24 hours. I drink a lot of green tea in between those, hot green tea, and that's fine because you need to stay hydrated. And so I drink a whole lot of that, and the tea sort of helps you feel full. But I do that on Sunday, and then I do it again on Wednesday. And what I found is, one, you said that the 16 hours that you didn't feel like a whole lot. It was just like you just don't eat later in the evening, and then you sleep, and you're up for a few hours. Next thing you know, you're eating again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 24 hours, it's like nothing. It's
It's
absolutely
8 hours more than the 16-hour. Yeah.
yeah, and it just absolutely. And I think one of the things that it sort of pointed out to me is how much eating in general. And of course, if you study the history of paleo diets and the thinking behind that, you know that in our human history, we're accustomed to periods of feast and famine. That the fasting is a natural part of the human condition when you don't have 24-hour grocery stores and a fast food drive-through every half block or so in the cities, and we just live now at a time for the first time in most of human history where we're just inundated with food all the time. And it becomes sort of a psychological crutch, I think. We eat out of boredom. We eat because we're watching something interesting on television and we just want something to do with our hands, while we're watching that. And it's a lot of crappy food that we're eating that way. And it is a lot of thoughtless eating when you're not hungry. And I've just been reminded by these 3 periods I've completed that actual hunger takes a while. It isn't something that, you skip, you go 2 hours without eating and you're next thing you know, you're really famished. It's not that way. Most of the eating that I do, I wasn't hungry at all when I ate. It was just sort of a habit. But
I want
anyway,
to just add, sorry, go ahead.
no, well, what I wanted to say was that I made a commitment to myself, and I carried this into talking about it to the men's meeting that I run off my Patreon every Saturday. Is that I wanted a place to hold myself accountable for it. So I took that to that group of guys and just told them what I was doing, that I'd be reporting. And so far, I've not broken any of the fasts. I haven't even been tempted to. It's been really good. And I've eaten within the limits of what I call my low carb diet when I am eating. And first week, I dropped a little over 3 pounds. And I have no doubt that I'm just weighing each Saturday. And I'm determined to drop that 42 pounds. I'm going to do it all the way through. And I'm going to do it with relative ease. I think the fasting will help it move along. But as I'm also finding out, there's a lot more to fasting that's healthy than just not taking in the calories for 24 hours.
Okay, can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, there's, I'm just learning about this. I mean, it's sort of new, but anybody can Google it, and perhaps the next time we talk, I'll be able to speak with a little bit more authority. But there is, of course, macrobiotics, organisms in your stomach that enjoy a break from processing food. Also, there's a difference in what you're burning. When you're consuming food, first thing you're burning is carbohydrates. And your body will select that every time. As a matter of fact, there is another form of dieting called food mixing. And what they suggest is that either eat carbohydrates or eat proteins, but don't eat them together. Because what happens when you eat carbohydrate, like a steak and potato, your body will work on the potato first. The steak will just sit there in your stomach, and the body will go after metabolizing the potato while the steak sort of festers in your stomach. Giving yourself a break from all digestion for a moment gives your digestive system a chance to recover and to do things sort of like sleeping does. There's reparations going on in your body when you're sleeping. There's healing that's going on while you sleep. And we see that when people are sleep deprived, they get sick. This is the human body after millions of years of evolution. And we've got 4 to 6 million years known of hominid development, where feast and famine was the routine. The human body is wired to eat and then to not eat.
Certainly
And
to cope with periods of lack of food. I mean, we certainly evolved coping with that for sure.
coping with it and
Surviving.
becoming a part of the health of the individual. That sort of famine period, that period of abstinence from food contributes to the health of the individual. Because like I said, you're burning carbohydrates when you eat, and when you don't eat, you start digesting, it starts breaking down fats.
Fats and proteins, unfortunately, which is another topic. We want to avoid losing proteins from your muscles. So that we should touch on that at some time too. I just wanted to throw one other thing in here on top of what you were saying about your fasting and not feeling hungry. You're also on a low carb diet, and carbs, and this is what the little bit of research I've been doing, carbs actually can make you feel full for a bit, but then they make you feel hungrier than you would normally be. So by reducing your carbs, maybe that's contributing to your not having a problem feeling with hunger.
I'll tell you why, if you like. I know exactly
Sure.
why
Sure.
carbohydrates do that, because they metabolize like a drug. We have the same issues. It's a reason that nicotine and cocaine are both so terribly addictive. What happens is that they're metabolized very quickly. They spike in your bloodstream and then they crash. And when they crash, it leaves you the craving. The same exact thing happens with carbohydrates, is that it triggers insulin resistance for one, which is not good for you, but it's metabolized quickly and then you crash and then you feel hungry again. And one of the things that anybody will notice when they get off of these simple carbohydrates and start getting a more protein rich diet, or, you know, I know the vegans hate this stuff, but I don't really care. When you switch this way, you stop feeling that hunger. That craving comes from the carbohydrates. It doesn't come from being hungry. It
Yeah.
comes from ingesting carbohydrates. And when you, after about a 3-day period of detoxing from those, you notice the hunger goes away. That craving. I wouldn't even call it hunger, it's craving.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never been really a high carb person, but I have had my share of carbs for sure, or many times in my life.
I
But
wish I could say that. I've poisoned myself over the years. I mean, huge bowls of pasta, huge bowls of rice. Absolutely.
I've had my times of that, but it's not been the extended times. Like I've been known to sit down and polish off a giant bag of Doritos, no problem, you know, but I don't do that like every night. That's kind of, it's not like, it has never become a big habit of mine, or giant bowls of pasta every night. So I probably, I don't know why it never fell into that trap, but by luck I didn't. But I can say that for me, we touched on this earlier, that I'd say the majority of my eating for sure is not because I'm hungry. It's a biggest problem I have is in the evening when I'm too tired to feel like doing any work and not tired enough to go to sleep. And I have to fill that time between getting when I'm feeling sleepy from when I'm like too tired to continue doing work. And there's about 3-4 hours there in the evening where my mind goes to the food. I'm not the slightest bit hungry, not even the slightest. But I'll go down, I'll find myself almost unconsciously, without thinking, just wander over to the fridge, open the fridge and start thinking, what could I have in here? Not hungry, even maybe feeling full, and still looking in the fridge for what can I have in here. It's looking for, I'm seeking out like a taste sensation, that kind of pleasure response, or the relief from boredom, all of those other kinds of things that have absolutely nothing to do with needing food or being hungry. Nothing. So I'm trying to figure out for me, like, how do I cope with that evening period that's like an hour or two after supper before I go in to get into bed? That's the hardest time for me. I tell you, it's that fridge down there is like a black hole magnet. It's just sucking me over there to come and look, you know. I'm not hungry. But it's
Well,
something going on in the mind there.
that should be, isn't that improving some the more you eat on a better pattern and eating better foods? That doesn't get any better?
Um, it hasn't maybe it's got a little bit better, but it's still definitely there for me. I don't feel hungry, you know, but I think about it, or it comes into my mind and I'm thinking I should sit down and do some work. Oh, I'm too tired to work. What am I going to do? I can't go to bed. I'm not tired enough to go to sleep. That damn refrigerator is over there.
Well, all I can say one thing is that bourbon and scotch are low carb.
Well, funny you should mention it. That's another thing that comes into my mind every night at that same time, at exact same time. And I do get into that. Probably more than I should. But that's another topic for another story. I haven't tried the 24-hour fast, but I do want to try that. The 16-hour fast, not really a big deal. For me, like, it's the evening. As long as I can stop eating by about 8 or so or 9, then I can get through to 16 hours the next afternoon. I don't find it a really big issue. The green tea really helps a lot for me as well. I use a lot of that. Sometimes I put ginger in it because ginger kind of warms and soothes my stomach quite a lot, you know. If you have any kind of feeling of hunger pangs, a little ginger in your green tea, green tea gives you a little perk, you know, from the caffeine, and the ginger soothes your stomach and your stomach comes real calm. Any kind of feeling of hunger tends to just go right out of your mind. And in the morning for me is not a big issue because in the morning I'm a little more alert and I'll sit down at my computer and I'll start to do some work and stuff like that. And so my mind is occupied and I don't think about it unless hunger starts, you know. Then I think about, oh, you know, I'm hungry. The time's it's 2 p.m. I better eat something, you know.
Well, one good thing you can say about the pattern that you're doing is that with the fasting patterns, you save money.
Yeah.
Junk food gets expensive. It does. I mean, when we eat a lot of junk, you find you'd be shocked if you start recording all the garbage that you eat and all the unnecessary food that you eat. And then there's the food that's decent for you that a lot of people will bypass in the refrigerator to get something that's crappy. I mean, how many times have you been into the refrigerator and say, well, there's some salad there, but I don't want that. Oh yeah, there's a chocolate bar. That's what I want. And then the salad goes bad and you end up throwing that away.
Yeah, been there.
Most people have, but the good thing about the low carb for me is that it breaks the addiction to all that. I don't care about those crappy foods when I'm not, you know, eating them all the time.
And I say, like, my diet has improved too, but I'm not all the way there. I've had some weak points. For instance, last week I had ice cream a couple of times. Not really part of this diet thing.
What? You don't have ice cream on your diet?
But I do want to share a couple of things I did find that fit into this, and I've been using in the last couple of weeks. And forgive me because a lot of people probably already know this, and I'm just learning about this stuff quite late in life, approaching 60 years old, and I'm surprised at how little I've known about some of these things. But Greek yogurt, for instance, I get this stuff from Costco, and it has in a serving, and a serving is not that big, but it has like 18 grams of protein, no fat, and a little bit of sugar. It's like 1 or 2 grams of sugar. Pretty low on sugar, low on fat, although fat's not really a problem. But this Greek yogurt, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of thick in consistency, almost not quite as thick as ice cream. But I put, when I'm feeling that I feel like I want to sit down and have a treat thing, I'll put a couple of teaspoons of raspberry jam, this low sugar raspberry jam you can get. I know it's got sugar in it, but it's that each teaspoon has like, I think it's like 6 grams or 8 grams of sugar. So you are getting some sugar. You got to watch that, but it's not a huge amount of sugar. So I give myself that treat, and I use it with, I put it in with just on the side with Greek yogurt, and it's almost as satisfying as a bowl of ice cream. And then the other thing I've done is I put just a tiny bit of ice cream in the side of that Greek yogurt. And so I'm eating the Greek yogurt, and you can take a little bit of ice cream, and it gives you the same kind of a pleasure. It's like a treat effect, you know. I wouldn't say you have to do that every single day, but it's a better treat effect than reaching for a bag of Doritos or something. Because with the Greek yogurt, I'm probably getting 20, maybe with this, depending on the size, 20 or 30 grams of protein out of that little bowl serving of Greek yogurt with a little bit of raspberry jam on the side. So, and it leads me into the other things. I think you really want to keep your protein levels up for a lot of reasons. One is protein tends to take away that feeling of hunger for longer. And especially as you get older, like you and I, Paul, your body tends to you don't want to let your body lose muscle if you can avoid it, because muscle is your friend. Muscle, that's what I read about just this past week. Muscle, and then we talked in the last time that why does your body use muscle and get rid of muscle when you go into a long fast? And I think this happens after about 3 days or so. You start to use muscle for energy, your body will. And 3 days is always a long fast. But I thought, this doesn't make any sense. Why would your body start to use up something as useful as muscle? And the reason, and anybody in there who knows more than this, feel free to correct me on this, but muscle is metabolically expensive to maintain. So by using it for energy, you're actually decreasing your body's energy requirements as you go. And so not even during a fast, if you stop using muscles, your body will start to atrophy them and use them and get rid of those muscles very quickly. Within about a week or so, even with normal diet, you will start to lose muscle that you don't use. And that's because, it makes sense when you think of that energy. Finding enough energy to survive is often, historically or evolutionarily, was a big problem. Minimizing how much energy is required makes evolution or survival sense. If you're not needing a muscle to survive, why do you metabolically support having it? You don't. Your body's evolved to not support having that muscle, which means if you can maintain muscle, you will burn more energy just sitting down watching TV. And every
Yes,
time,
absolutely. More muscular people have a higher rate of metabolism and they burn more calories per hour just sitting there than somebody with less muscle. I think the moral to all that story is don't fast for more than 3 days.
right, exactly that, for sure. But also, and when we'll get to the topic of exercise, I think if you have the ability, like health-wise, to go into the gym and do a little bit of exercise, you get a big payback for that. Putting on an extra pound of muscle, this is another thing, is very metabolically expensive. It costs your body the equivalent of about 1 pound of energy, okay, 4,000 calories, just the process of building that muscle. So, and that's not including the materials you have to eat to form the muscle. That's on top of that. It's 4,000 calories to build a pound of muscle in the first place. And then that muscle has to use calories to maintain, so you don't lose it. So the metabolic, it's an expensive metabolic process to build muscles, and an expensive metabolic process to maintain them so that you don't lose them. So a little time in the gym, if you're going to 3 days a week, maybe with weight-bearing exercises that are designed to put on muscle, will give you a big bang for your buck and help you with weight loss issues. But see your doctor. You want to make sure if you have a heart problem, whatnot, explain to your doctor what you're thinking of doing, and he may want you to have a stress test before you start any of these kinds of things that you haven't done before. What do you think, Paul?
Well, I think you're right. Be careful with any of this stuff. And I think it's another reason because neither Steve or I are experts on this. We're just talking about what we've learned and what we're doing. I'm going to be interested to see in the comments other people's ideas. And Steve, you also sort of put out a call for others that wanted to join us that would have something to say on this topic. To maybe join us in a future discussion, which I would also like to do.
Yeah, I'm keen to hear other people's experiences, what's worked for you, what hasn't. I mean, I've been trying personally different things over the past few years, and not a lot of things have really worked well for me, you know. And I thought about this when I was younger. Of course, younger is younger. Everything's easier when you're younger. But I used to do a lot of exercise, a lot of sports. I played squash and I swam competitively. And I was wondering, back then I was like effortlessly staying at my 142 pounds, which is about 40 pounds less than I am now, or 30 now. I've lost about 20 pounds, but I got up to almost 200 pounds as over the following 10, 20 years since laying off that exercise. And I always thought it was because it was the length of time I was exercising, and, you know, I did a lot of lengths in the pool or played a lot of squash. So when I started picking it up again, maybe 5 years ago, I did long bike rides, long swims, long walks. Didn't lose any weight. Still sitting there at 195 pounds. I said, what the hell? I'm doing the same kind of distance as I did when I was 30, but I'm not losing any weight. But when I thought back of it more clearly, I was doing high intensity interval training at those times. I didn't even know it. Playing squash involves sprinting for 20 or 30 seconds. Then you have a 30-second rest between the rallies, and the judge says, you know, you serve again, and you sprint like a mad dog for another 20. You're really, really intense. It's sprint and stop, sprint and stop, sprint and stop for an hour. And that is been shown, high intensity interval training has been shown to dramatically lose weight for you, much more so than steady long distance exercise does. And the same with the swimming training. When I was swimming when I was younger, I didn't even consider that when I even started swimming again, that in fact what we were doing was 10 repeats of different exercises at high rates with a rest between each repeat. All of our practices were like that. And so all of us were lean, very lean athletic machines, but it wasn't because of distance. It was because of high intensity interval training. And when you do the high intensity interval training, your body burns for 2 hours at a higher metabolic rate afterwards. You don't get that with steady exercising.
And you also have to consider too that in all those years that have passed, your metabolism drops. You can do the same amount of exercise at 50 that you did at 30, and you will lose less weight.
I want to talk about that a bit, because that's what I've always thought as well. And just about 2 days ago, I was reading this article that questions that, and they were saying that your metabolism through your life doesn't change very much. What happens though, people get older, they start to do less. And I know that for sure for me. Like,
oh yeah,
you slow down and you don't push it.
But your metabolism does drop.
I'm sure it does drop, but yeah. We're saying that it's just not that big of an effect. The biggest effect they found in this study was just the natural fact that people give up as they get older. They cut back. They say, no more, you know. But this one study was that, or site that I was reading was saying they're following men who kept up their exercise routine, like more or less as they were before, and these guys are lean. I've seen pictures that they're showing these guys 70 years old, and they're lean and fit. Of course, they look their age, but they're lean and fit. You know. I don't know. The jury's out on me. I wouldn't say I'm going to totally accept that or totally reject it, but I say there's enough older guys that are fit and lean for their whole life that I'd say, you know, it's possible.
Sure, it's possible. Anything's possible. I still have to be convinced of that, but that's okay too.
But it's good to give it a try. And let's hear from guys and all your experiences out there. What's working, what's not working. I think I've touched on most of the things that I wanted to talk about that happened in the past week. I'll throw in the one more nutrition thing. Hard cheeses. Most guys probably already know this. Hard cheeses are pretty good for you. Got lots of protein, and actually the hard cheese is not bad for your heart and stuff like that.
And one of the things I found with low carb cooking is that you can take hard cheeses like Parmesan and grate them, mix them with a little bit of almond flour, and have a low carb dusting on food that you fry so you can have fried food.
With
And
almond powder. I never heard of that one.
almond flour, yeah.
Almond flour. Okay.
They make almond flour and coconut flour. And in some cases, for substitutes, they work really, really well for things. And in other cases, they taste like crap.
Okay.
Some things don't work, but there are some things with the almond flour and coconut flour that work exceedingly well.
And things like Parmesan cheese that gives you a big flavor burst on certain foods really works well. I love really old cheddar, that has a little salt grain parts in it. Very like 6-year-old cheddar.
Yep.
I like that stuff. Great flavor burst and good protein, not very much sugar, and not that many calories in it. When you consider that you don't eat a block of cheese, right? You don't eat, I don't know if you did, I'd probably feel sick as hell if I tried. The amount of cheese that you actually eat and feel satiated by eating is actually fairly small and probably run you in the 150 calories, and that would be a lot of cheese. So it's a good option out there. Viewers, I'm recording this